2.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out. This is High Point Mayor Jay Wagner speaking to the folks, anybody listening online. Calling to order our High Point City Council meeting for Monday, May 15th. We have a quorum of council present. All members of council are present except for member Cyril Jefferson, who is on his way. Before we begin, I believe there's some folks in the room who are here regarding the possible new school at Boylston and Bunker Hill Road. There's one item on the agenda tonight regarding the school, and all we're doing is setting a public hearing. So the public hearing is going to be on May the 20th. So if you came here to speak about the school, you're not going to get to speak, okay? And that resolution to establish a public hearing.
June 20th, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, did I say May?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, I want to be real clear. June 20th, okay? So that item is going to take about 10 seconds, all right, to approve. We're just going to set the hearing, and that's it. Everybody can come back on the 20th, and we'll talk about it, okay? So if you came here about the school and you think you're going to get to speak tonight, you're not going to get to speak tonight, all right? So I just want to let you know that. You're welcome to stay and hear everything out, but we're not talking about that tonight. So with that being said, I'll call the meeting to order, and I'll ask everyone to please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we do have one proclamation and then a recognition to begin the meeting. The proclamation is regarding National Public Works Week. So that proclamation reads as follows. Whereas public works infrastructure, facilities, and services are of critical importance to the health, safety, economy, and overall well-being of our community, and whereas such facilities and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals, engineers, and administrators representing all levels of government who are responsible for and must plan, design, construct, inspect, operate, and maintain the public works facilities essential to serve our citizens. And whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff public works functions is materially influenced by the people's attitude and understanding of the importance of the work they perform. And whereas it is in the public interest for our citizens, civic leaders, and children to learn and understand the importance of vital public works programs such as drinking water, sanitary and storm sewers, streets and highways, public buildings and grounds, public fleets, and solid waste collection and disposal. And whereas the theme for this year's celebration is Connecting the World Through Public Works, and 2023 marks the 63rd Annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association. Now, therefore, I, J.W. Wagner, Mayor of the City of High Point, do hereby proclaim the week of May 21st through 27th, 2023, as Public Works Week in the City of High Point, North Carolina, and I call upon all citizens and civic leaders in this community to gain knowledge of and maintain a progressive interest in the public works programs vital to our everyday lives, and to recognize the daily contributions which public works officials make to ensure our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. Is there someone to receive them? Robbie, come forward. Let's get a picture. Thank you, Robert. Do you want to say a few words about what y'all do every day to keep the city functioning?
I'll take a very brief moment.
Give us a few words.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So thank you very much for this. I know this is, I have a great staff working for me, several folks that come in each and every day, every 7 days a week, oftentimes at night, to take care of many of the things that often go unnoticed. Every time that you turn your tap on, the water comes out, that's because of our public works folks. When you flush your toilet and the items go away, that's because of our public works folks. When you drive down the road and you have a good solid surface to ride on, that's our public works folks keeping your roads paved, and so much more. Your garbage collection, your recycling, your taking away, have our landfill. We have so many things. Have a great management team and council that supports us, and I thank the citizens as well that supports us with this. So thank you all for recognizing us this week.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's important for us to remember that a lot of the things we take for granted, getting up and turning on the water and having it be clean and having your sewage taken away and your garbage picked up and your electric lights turn on, and the things that we do, we tend to take for granted, and those things don't just happen. It takes a lot of people working together to make them happen. So thank you, Robbie, for all that your department does, really that the whole city does to make those things happen every day. Next, there's a recognition I'd like to make in conjunction with the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. And for that, I'm going to recognize Beverly Lemon, who comes to us from the Internal Revenue Service. Here she comes.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to your beautiful city of High Point, North Carolina. My name is Beverly Lemon, and I'm a relationship manager out of Columbia, South Carolina, and I'm here to recognize some very valuable volunteers in your city. We have the IRS VITA program, which is Volunteer Income Tax Assistant Program, that IRS has been partnering with nonprofit organizations in the community to provide free tax preparation. We have been doing this over 50 years. We celebrate 50 years a couple years ago, and we are still volunteering. We have 80,000 volunteers nationwide. We have $4.2 billion in refund to the community through the IRS program. So tonight, we want to recognize High Point VITA Coalition volunteers for volunteering for the Volunteer Income Tax Assistant Program. They provided 941 tax returns for 2022, taxes, 245,160 in EITC income alone. That's Earned Income Tax Credit. 953,000 in federal returns, 55,000 in state refunds, and they did it with 1,913 volunteer hours. And I think they are well-deserved of a hand clap for volunteer that many hours for volunteering. I believe the volunteers will be recognized at a later date or another time to take a photo. Would you please stand, all your volunteers, would you please stand at this time? Also, I would like for the mayor to come down to be recognized. Yes.
I paid my taxes.
Jay Wagner. Mayor Wagner, on behalf of the Internal Revenue Service, Tracy Walker Carter, the Director of Atlanta Service Center, is here to, she sent a certificate for community service leadership. And this certificate recognizes and appreciates the outstanding efforts, the dedication, and your personal contributions in building a stronger community throughout this great nation. And she sent her thanks and to let you know that we are grateful that you are allowing your volunteers to participate in volunteering to give back to the community. So we thank you.
Thank you.
Can we have all the volunteers come up front, please, to take a photo? Thank you. And thank you for having me.
I was thinking the same thing.
She actually works for this boss. Right. Last year, this one got voted on. I voted on it. Yeah. And then later on, she applied, and I didn't know she was gonna. I can tell her. Okay. These ain't built where they used to be. Be bending down when you're 12. I'm 285 pounds. My knees hurt. They hurt all that. Is that mine or yours?
I just want to make one other announcement.
I'm talking about in your hand.
IRS is also hiring.
I got it.
They need to hire over 80,000 within the next 10 years. So please visit our website and please tell others we need some more IRS employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck with that.
Okay, so next item on the agenda is our Finance Committee portion of our meeting, and for that, I will turn the meeting over to Councilman Britt Moore, who chairs that committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had sent out the packet to you, and this one includes our nonprofit allocations, but there's a consent agenda piece that begins this, and I want to just scan it real quick. Nothing I need to recuse here, Madam Attorney, on this. Okay. So for the items you reviewed in your consent agenda, I will recommend approval of those items.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor. And we have had some a last minute, couple of changes. I want to make sure I do this correctly. So I'm going to have Stephen Howlick come up as we talk about the outside nonprofit organization allocation.
Yes, sir. Thank you. On May the 11th, Finance Committee made recommendations of allocation of funds for outside nonprofit organizations for the FY 23-24 fiscal year, and that funding would be made available pending approval of the budget later next month. There are 3 items before you. The reason is by state law, if an elected official serves on the board of directors of an organization that's going to be receiving funds, they'd be recused from that. And so the first item is kind of the bulk of everyone, and which no one for our records would have to be recused. The second item is for funding allocated for High Point Discovered and Carl Chavis YMCA, and our records have Councilman Jefferson on their board of directors, and so he would be recused from that vote. And then the last item is allocation of funds for Macedonia Family Resource Center, and our records have Councilman Johnson on that board, and so he would be recused from that vote.
Okay.
And Councilman Jefferson has also requested that he's going to recuse himself from 3 others. So we'll need to pull the 3 from the first vote and shift them to the second vote, such that Councilman Jefferson will be recusing himself from 5 total. Mm-hmm. And would you mind, for the record, stating the 3 that you'd like to recuse yourself from in addition to those?
absolutely. So I'd like to recuse from YWCA of High Point, from Arts Council, and from High Point Schools Partnership.
So at this point, then we want to make sure we're legally correct. This is the first time it's happened last minute. So we take each item by number now that those that know they're recused from that vote and go straight through these three items. Is that correct?
We have to actually take a vote to recuse.
Make a motion to recuse Councilman Jefferson.
Okay.
Those three.
Well, wait a minute.
Yeah,
We
we
gotta
need
do
to
it by
Depends on what
number.
order you're going to do it in.
Depending on the number. Let me call the order first.
Okay.
All right? The first item, number is 2023-232, and that's for the consideration of the total of agenda items. Is that correct?
Amending it to remove the three that Councilman Jefferson just requested.
Okay, we're going to remove the three that Councilman Jefferson has brought in tonight.
Which is YWCA.
Yep, Arts Council and High Point Public Schools Partnership. And- Okay, and that,
That's
we
a motion.
appreciate him doing that. But yes, I'll make a motion for approval on that.
Second.
Okay, so just to be clarified, there's a motion and a second, so we do have a pending motion for approval of the outside agency funding listed with the exception of the items for YWCA, High Point Schools Partnership, and what was the third? Arts Council. Okay, everybody understand what we're voting on? Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously.
The next item is item 2023-233, and need to,
The motion to recuse.
I'm sorry?
A motion to refer recusal.
Yeah, motion for recusal of Mr. Jefferson on this item.
Okay, there's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a second. All in favor of recusing Councilman Jefferson from the consideration of funding for these 5 entities, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously.
Okay, and the last one under general business is 2023-234.
Approve it now.
have to
Yeah.
approve
No, we have to actually approve it.
Approve that agenda item.
We just
All
approved
right,
it.
then I make a motion to approve item 2023-233. We got so many people moving on and on.
Second.
5.
Yeah.
As amended and to include the full 5 that Councilman
Correct.
Jefferson. Yes, that's.
Yes,
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for approval. It will be for the 3 items that we just mentioned, plus Carl Chavis Y and High Point Discovered.
correct.
All right. Any discussion on that motion? Everybody clear? Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. All right, to help this along, I'll make a motion to recuse Councilman Johnson from this item. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to recuse Councilman Johnson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes. All right.
All right. Item 2023-234, so I'll make a recommendation for approval.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for approval of item 2023-234. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes
All right.
unanimously.
We got through all of our board members there.
All right.
All right. So next item, we have a public hearing, and at this time, I'll open the public hearing on item 2023-227. It's a resolution concerning our North Carolina building reuse grant, and Sandy Dunbeck will speak to us.
Good evening. I am Sandy Dunbeck with High Point Economic Development, and I, along with my colleague Sarah Stevenson, are pleased to bring you this building reuse project tonight for High Point. The company is Cells Solar, which stands for Smart Era Lighting Systems. Cells specializes in innovative, efficient, and off-grid energy solutions. Their solar-powered products range from streetlights to bench charging stations to transit lighting, billboards, and more. With us here in council chambers tonight is Rafael Badilla. He's Cells Solar President and CEO, and he will share information with us shortly. But to expand operations by bringing some product assembly in-house, Cells, who has been located in Winston-Salem, has purchased 1710 and 1720 King Street here in High Point. The buildings need significant upfit, for which the company has applied to the North Carolina Department of Commerce for a building reuse grant. In addition, the company estimates they will invest $921,241 to upfit their space. The state grant could award up to $100,000 to support this effort and does require a 5% local match from the local municipality, which in this case would be $5,000. So should the project move forward as planned, the company would relocate their 5 positions and create 13 new positions over 3 years with an average annual wage of $58,670. So for this project, High Point EDC recommends approving the match to support the company's expansion in High Point. The source of the funding would be the city's Economic Development Incentive Fund, which is funded by general and electric revenues. So we recommend that you consider authorizing up to $5,000 in building reuse grant match incentives for the Cells Solar project, and also that you would pass a resolution of support for the project, which is also required by the state. The state announces their grant recipients for this cycle on June the 15th of 2023. Construction could begin after the award, and hopefully the company would then be able to move forward with their operation in High Point. So now I'll turn it over to Rafael Badilla.
Good evening, Mayor Wagner, council members, manager. My name is Rafael Badilla, and I'm the founder of Cells Solar. At Cells, we design and manufacture solar power solutions. We design and manufacture solar power solutions with different varieties, from charging stations to lighting to solar generators. These are some of our products. The orange ones in the left corner are solar generators, tables for universities. You can charge several devices. They have Wi-Fi, USB ports, and charging pads. Also, we work really close together with transit authorities. For example, here in Marty County, we have several multi-year contracts with several transit authorities to provide solar lighting solutions for their bus shelters or non-shelters stoplights. This is a little bit about the family of products that we manufacture, from park lighting to street lighting to charging stations, generators, box, and many others. Some of our clients, we have a wide list of clients, from federal governments like Customs and Border Patrol, to multiple cities, transit authorities, universities. We recently purchased 1710 and 1720 King Street. Those buildings are located in a hot zone. For us, those buildings meet our short and middle term needs. And one of the main reasons is that they are located in a hot zone. There are several federal government contracts that are assigned for companies located in hot zones. So we believe that we will take some benefit for moving our operations there. We sincerely believe that with your support, we're going to be able to retrofit these 2 buildings. 1710 King Street is going to be used for our office space and assembly, and 1720 is going to be used for warehousing some of our items. As I said, we believe that with your support, we can transform this unused space that has been in use for 12 to 15 years. And we will be bringing to the community, high technical jobs. This is a little bit of renders of how we expect to do the exteriors of the buildings. If any of you council members, mayor, have any question, I'm here to.
Do you do any of, is this going to be basically, what type of jobs? I know you said high-tech type
Yes,
job,
we're
but
going to have people soldering our boards. We're going to do ABS thermoforming, and we're going to do, assembling our whole units in that space.
any other questions?
I just want to say thank you for your investment in High Point, and I noticed on your list of clients that you service several municipalities. So
Yes.
as we light up High Point, maybe we'll be a client someday. So thank you for your investment.
No, thank you. Hopefully we can, work together with the city and hopefully bring jobs into that community.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak for or against this item? Okay, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing on this item, and I'll make a motion to approve item 2023-227.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for approval of this item. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? And that motion passes unanimously. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
The next item, I'll open the public hearing on item 2023-228. It's performance-based incentives, and Sandy will present on that item. And for those of you visiting, I didn't say this, but if you don't know, Sandy is our director of our High Point Economic Development Alliance, or department.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you. For the second project that we have to bring forward to you tonight, Mayor and members of council and manager, this is a downtown project for High Point, and it is a project that would continue to help make High Point a city with a very vibrant downtown. This project is Dive Bar, which is a barcade concept that will include pool tables, arcade games, pinball, K-darts, skee ball, basketball, and more. The Dive Bar exists to bring back the days of simple fun and affordability. The model is built to serve everyone, as the company prides themselves on being family-friendly before 8 p.m. and welcome to all. The company currently has operations in Hickory and Mooresville, North Carolina. And with us here in council chambers tonight is Rob Groskopf, Dive Bar co-owner and operator, who will also share information with us tonight. The company anticipates new real and personal property investment of over $650,000. They would be creating 19 new jobs, which include 7 new and 12 part-time. The company would lease that 4,794 square foot of space in the downtown for 7 years, and would have options to renew for 5 and then 3 years at 312 North Elm Street across from Truist Point. Therefore, High Point AD staff recommends that City Council consider authorizing performance-based incentives in the amount of $124,798. The source of that funding would be the city's Economic Development Incentive Fund, which is funded by general and electric revenues. Mayor and council, it is our recommendation from High Point EDC for City Council to authorize up to $124,798 in performance-based incentives for this Dive Bar project, and that you would authorize the city manager to execute a performance agreement with the company containing benchmarks for the company to achieve and a schedule for the payment of such financial incentives. The company does plan to make a decision this quarter and would hope to be operational by end of year. And now I'll turn it over to Rob Groskopf to share more about the company and the project. Rob?
Thank you so much. Mayor, members of council, thank you so much for your time this evening. I know you guys were all busy people, so I appreciate you guys making time for me, and thank you for allowing me to speak. Like she said, my name is Rob Groskopf. I'm the co-owner and operator of Dive Bar North Carolina. We've got 2 really successful locations so far, one in Mooresville, which was kind of our humble beginning, 1,900 square foot space in the basement of one of the buildings that we own in downtown Mooresville. And then our much more ambitious project, Hickory, as you can see there on the left. All right, so our philosophy, so Sandy kind of touched on this a little bit, but as a lot of markets start moving to things that are more expensive and more exclusive, we hope to bring exactly the opposite to towns across North Carolina. There was a day where things used to be affordable and fun and would allow anyone and everyone to enjoy them. That's exactly what we hope to bring to High Point, to all the communities that we serve. So, our emphasis is on culture and community, first and foremost, and to develop small and medium-sized cities and towns across North Carolina. So what we offer arcade, pool, dart, and other games. We offer meeting place for members of the community, typically in excess of 175 folks. Our dive bar, so our background is actually kind of the opposite that I talked about. My background is in high-end food, fine dining, and cocktails. So we bring a really high attention to detail to a very community and, come one, come all establishment. Our main focus really at the store level is on customer experience and community. And we do that through the offering of, our games, beer, wine, liquor, and then we do also serve food, and we are kid-friendly until 8 o'clock. Why we're considering High Point as our top destination. So a lot of reasons. As we get into looking at towns and cities throughout North Carolina, we do a lot of homework, right? So city demographics play a huge part in that. The cities, how the city plans on growing their city and bringing new investment in, and we're really excited about all the development that you guys have going down in the city of High Point, specifically around the ballpark area, which we will call home, hopefully. You can see the building right there. It's right across the street from Stock and Grain. But proximity to High Point University, there's a really good community feel here. We've gone out into the community and spent some dollars and talked to some folks, and it seems like this is a project that people would be excited about. Obviously, economic incentives and our proximity to the highway all play a factor. What we plan to bring, so 19 new jobs, but $650,000 in investment. We're a debt-free organization, and we're long-term thinkers. So, typically a lot of our leases are 7-10 years. Coming into a space for 3 to 5 years doesn't really give you enough time to become part of the fabric of a community. Just last week, I was at a community golf tournament for a young woman who collapsed on the softball field in Mooresville. And so we're helping with her medical bills. So you really can't do that just by spending a year or two somewhere. You really got to ingratiate yourself with the community and get to know folks and reach out. Thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Timeline for opening, perhaps?
Timeline for opening? Yeah, so as you know, obviously things are always contingent on how quickly lease negotiations go and permitting, but we hope to be open by the end of the year, and that would include obviously lease negotiation, permitting, and then construction time.
Anything else? Thank you for being here. Is there anyone else here to speak on this item tonight, for or against? Okay, hearing none, I'll close the public meeting on this item, and I will make a favorable recommendation on item 2023-228 for approval.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for approval of this item. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
That's all for finance, I believe.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Moore. Next on the agenda are our Prosperity and Livability Committee items, and for that, I'll recognize Councilmember Hudson, who chairs that committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a consent agenda to present for you tonight that includes two items, 2023-153 and 2023-155, and I present that in form of a recommendation for approval.
Second.
And there's a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda items for P&L. Is there any discussion on those items? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
That's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda are Community Development Committee items, and I'll recognize Councilmember Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. First, before I begin, I'd like to make a motion to pull item 2023-196 out of the consent agenda and into pending until June 5th, the June 5th meeting.
Second. Motion and a second to move item 2023-196 into pending until, you said June 5th?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
All right. And the remaining items, 2023-197 and 199, are under the consent agenda, and I'd like to make a motion to approve both.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the two remaining items, 197 and 199. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
And that is all, Mayor. Thank you.
Don't you have a public hearing for our annual action plan?
Oh, I sure did. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I do apologize. Jumped a little bit too much.
Happens to the best of us.
Such a small line here.
I've been known to jump over a few things here and there.
All right, the 2023 annual action plan, I will turn the floor over to our community development. First, I'd like to open the public hearing, and then I'll turn the floor over to staff, to Nina, to present. I am all off of that.
I feel you, brother.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council and our City Manager. I'm Nina Wilson, the Director of Community Development and Housing, and tonight we're bringing before you our 2023-24 Annual Action Plan. This is year 4 of our 5-year consolidated plan, and the action plan is the strategic plan that describes sources, uses, and the beneficiaries of programs that we will undertake for the 2023-24 program year. It primarily identifies how the city plans to use our Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnerships Program funds. It also includes state and local funding. This year, for the 2023 year, we have been allocated $817,693 in CDBG funds and $541,533 in home funds. And I will say that we did get a reduction in both programs, but I also like to reiterate that that has nothing to do with performance. These are formula allocations, federal formula allocations, and it is disheartening when we know that we have so many needs within our community, but we're receiving fewer dollars to actually address those needs. In our action plan, or our consolidated plan, the 5-year plan, we identified our strategic goals to be housing, addressing the homeless, our community development strategies, special needs, economic development, and administration, planning, and our management strategy. And for each one of these goals, we've identified certain goals and activities and objectives to address each one of these strategic goals. And the areas of impact that we concentrate on or focus on within our community development programs include affordable housing through our emergency and urgent repair program, down payment assistance, new construction, which is single family and multifamily, and Operation Inasmuch. We also work with the community as far as community capacity building. We provide public service grants to nonprofits, technical assistance to our neighborhood associations and groups. Of course, you saw the presentation tonight or the recognition for the VITA program. And we also work with the Community Gardens program. And then, of course, code enforcement through public nuisance abatement and the minimum housing code enforcement. This year, our funding sources will total, and I keep saying this year, but we are looking at 2023-24. Total sources are $2,872,674. And as you can see, that is a combination of federal funds, local funds, and or the general fund, and the state funds through the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. The majority of our funding is federal funding, but we also do want to thank, and we thank you all for supporting our programs through the general fund. As I said before, our funds are being cut, so we certainly do appreciate you all continuing to support our program with general funds. And for the proposed uses, we have quite a few things outlined. Of course, we have, as I mentioned before, our areas of impact that focus on housing programs, which are emergency repair, Operation Inasmuch, our CHOTO activities, homebuyer assistance, infill housing, construction training. Those are primarily the housing programs. And then, of course, public services grants. This year, you all provided funding for the winter shelter program, which we appreciate that. Fair housing to assist in any way that we can with any of their needs in human relations. The VITA program, we're looking at a slight increase there, the $92.50. We do have debt service on our Section 108 program, which was for the multifamily rental housing development, affordable housing program delivery, capacity building delivery, and of course, program administration. So these are all of the activities that we anticipate undertaking or planning to undertake next year. And for the public services grants, we always like to let you all see who the the Citizens Advisory Council. They looked at and scored the applications. We received, I want to say approximately 8 applications for $122,000, almost $123,000. But we have $75,000 allocated. And so this is what the Citizens Advisory Council has proposed for the funding. These are their recommendations. There are 6 agencies here. You can see the Arc of High Point, the Salvation Army Boys and Girls Club, the Housing Authority of the City of High Point, Senior Resources of Guilford, the Servant Center, and Growing High Point. And so they have allocated those funds and are making recommendations for that $75,000 for your approval. And this just shows the schedule of activities that we have taken thus far to bring us to this point. Of course, here we are today for the public hearing, and then we're looking at submitting the plan upon approval, whether that be later this evening or in the morning. But we will be submitting that here shortly. If there are no objections and, as long as there's nothing that actually sort of changes the course of what we've proposed in the action plan. So are there any questions or comments?
You stated your federal funds were lower, which last few years you certainly hadn't heard that much coming out of the feds. You said it's formula-based. Can you put it in layman's terms where you think that cut came from?
In all honesty, I would say no. I know that the formula is based on things such as poverty rates, overcrowded housing, our population. So those are the factors that go into the allocation. And the only thing that I have kind of maybe looked at is that there are more entitlements sometimes that come on board. So you have to look at areas where maybe their population is increasing, so they're getting more funding, or there may be other municipalities that are actually qualifying to be entitlements, or even through the home program, you may have more consortiums or participating jurisdictions coming online. So you are basically splitting the pie among more people.
So your total sources, you said, are around 2.8 million?
Yes, sir.
Is that total number down as well, or is it up compared to last year?
Compared to last year, it actually is about $100,000 less. So it's on par. It's pretty much on par.
Okay.
And like I said, just because of the support that you all have given us as well.
Okay.
Any other questions? I'll just say, I really respect and imagine the complexities of working with different levels of government and dealing with funding and restrictions and et cetera. I don't know if everybody appreciate what that looks like day to day, so thank you to you and your staff for that.
Thank you, we appreciate it.
Is there anyone else here to speak for or against this item? If not, I'll make a motion to approve. Oh, first I got to close the public hearing. And then I'll make the motion to approve this item.
Second. Okay, there's a motion and a second for approval of the annual action plan. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All I have, Mayor.
Okay. We'll now move to planning and development items. First item is a resolution of intent to establish a public hearing date of June 20th, 2023 for the annexation case regarding the 30 acres for the possible new school. I'll make a motion for approval of that item. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. We have several items on for public hearing. First one is zoning map amendment 23-10. This is in regard to SL Wendover LLC and Deep River Partners. Mr. Shannon.
Yes,
Good
sir.
to see you.
We'll get our presentation ready for you.
While Mr. Shannon is working, Mr. Shannon and I go way back. I'm in my 11th year up here, and then I spent 7 years on planning and zoning before that. We go back like 20 years of me listening to you give presentations on zoning cases. It just occurred to me how long that has been.
Yes, sir.
Well, it's good to see you again.
Thank you.
All right. Let's do it again.
Herb Shannon, Senior Planner with the City of High Point Planning and Development Department, and I'll be providing you with a summary of zoning items. Your first item, zoning case 23-10. This is a request to rezone a 54-acre parcel located along the east side of NC 68, also known as East Chester Drive, approximately 620 feet north of Piedmont Parkway. There's currently a planned development zoning on this site. The applicant's requesting rezoning to update that planned development zoning to our current standards. This slide depicts the city's adopted land use plan for that area. You can see those areas that are highlighted in purple are intended for restricted industrial use. The site in question is right here, and it's part of a larger mixed-use area that was established in the 2000s. In 2007, the current site, which is right here, along with land to the north, were granted a plan amendment to establish a mixed-use land use plan designation, excuse me, along with zoning. And this is the surrounding zoning pattern for this area. Just for those members of the public, the areas that are highlighted in white are lands that are already within the city of High Point. The areas are in gray are unincorporated Guilford County. This northern portion of the city, most of the lands in this area are within the city of High Point. That northern portion of this planned development has already developed with a combination of some commercial and multifamily use. The applicant's requesting to amend that planned development for the southern portion to expand allowable uses. It was initially approved for just office and industrial uses. The applicant desires to have a mixture of office, industrial, commercial, excuse me, and higher density multifamily. As far as the surrounding zoning, you have that planned development mix to the north. To the south and to the east are conditional use light industrial. And on the opposite side of NC 68 is conditional use light industrial and agricultural within Guilford County. And this is a new item we're presenting to give you a better representation of the zoning pattern. This is a color-coded zoning for this area. So you can see this is an established industrial or restricted industrial portion of the Eastchester Quarter, but to the north, you have an established commercial node from the Eastchester Quarter Plan. Now, with the Planned Development District, that's established to allow unified control of land, and it allows more flexibility in the standard zoning ordinance to encourage higher development standards. But in exchange for that flexibility, staff is looking for some higher standards than what is typically found in the development ordinance. The applicant has submitted a planned development master plan that locks in the manner in which the site is to develop. This is their master plan. You have Eastchester Drive to the west, and they're divided into tracks A through E. Tracks A and B on the eastern part of the site, they're proposing for high-density multifamily up to 26 units per acre. That could allow about approximately 800 dwelling units. Tracks C and D along the Eastchester frontage are for office, some employment center commercial uses, and some specifically limited commercial uses. And then track E is their stormwater control pond. That would be a master plan pond for the entire development. And this is just a table of outlining what was previously approved, most of it light industrial office uses, to now, as I previously noted, some high-density residential, some mixture of employment center district, industrial, and some specific office uses. An important factor regarding the site that this is along the Eastchester corridor. Development along that corridor has been influenced by the adoption of the Eastchester Quarter Plan. And the main purpose is to have that corridor, which is our main gateway, have orderly development along it. We're looking to minimize congestion by preventing haphazard commercial development. The plan specifically talks about prohibiting any type of strip commercial and limiting commercial to well thought out clusters. We have three main clusters of commercial zoning, along the Main Street corridor up to Lassiter Drive, at the Skeet Club, Penny, Wendover intersection, and then this intersection at Regency and Eastchester Drive. When this project came through, staff had several meetings with the applicants to look at higher standards. And some of the key findings that we looked at were, does this meet our quarter standard requirement for a planned development? Yes, it does. By bringing this entire area in as one large development, it increases the potential of having a unified development. One additional condition that staff had recommended was including a standard that along the Eastchester frontage that there be no parking in front of buildings, that parking be limited to the sides or rear of buildings. The applicant did not agree to that condition, and I'll get to that a little bit more in our final recommendation. The applicant has higher development standards along the Eastchester Quarter frontage of the site from the Eastchester Quarter Plan. They've offered conditions for extension of Empire Street. Currently, Empire Street stubs right to the southern portion of the site. They will be extending that through the site, and that was an important issue regarding the Eastchester Quarter Plan, has recommendations for parallel streets to help provide alternate ways in and out. By having that extension, all the traffic's not just going straight to Eastchester, it provides alternate ways in and out of development. The applicants also offered higher conditions regarding pedestrian access. When the development to the north came in, they put in an integrated network system of sidewalks that you see highlighted in yellow, and also extended sidewalks along Regency so you can connect to the Bicentennial Greenway. With this application, the applicant has offered a condition that along the southeastern portion of the site, they would do a greenway, they were going to do an internal greenway system, but also extend that off-site to Piedmont Parkway, which is a few hundred feet away from the Bicentennial Greenway Trail. With up to 800 residential units permitted, staff is wanted to encourage the use of that greenway system. The applicant has also limited commercial to just specific uses. As I previously noted, we do not want the Eastchester Drive to strip out for commercial use. We want to preserve that as a travel corridor, so only limited commercial uses have been proposed. With that, staff is recommending approval of this request. However, we are recommending that there be a condition that along the Eastchester frontage, that there be no parking along the front. We have a similar situation with development to the north. If you had a chance to travel to that commercial corridor or commercial nodes, there are some parking in the front, but you don't have a sea of parking. It may just be a travel lane or one row of parking. And one of the higher standards that staff is looking to have with this PUD is along the east Chester frontage only, limit parking to the front, to the sides and rear of buildings. Now, the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this request at the April P&Z meeting. By a vote of 8-0, the commission recommended approval. I would note their approvals did not include the higher parking standards that staff had recommended. We have included in your staff report a consistency statement that was forwarded to you from the Planning and Zoning Commission for your consideration. That's a brief summary of this request. Are there any questions of staff at this time?
Any questions for staff?
Yeah, can you talk about the parking piece again and the...
Because the applicant is because the applicant is requesting a PUD, we're looking for higher development standards, and we spent weeks negotiating with them several different standards, but we are looking for that higher standard that if you're parking along the frontage, we don't want to see a sea of parking. The applicant has an idea of types of uses, but there's nothing specific. So staff is looking for parking to be either to the side of the building or to the rear. And the East Chester Corridor Plan offers reduced setbacks when you have those type of development situations. We do not have a lot of examples of that, but that's something that staff is pushing when appropriate for those higher standards along this corridor.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
So can I ask about the connection to the greenway again you were talking about?
Yes.
That is a very flat section of that greenway, so access will be off of Piedmont Parkway, not onto the greenway itself.
Correct. Right. The land just east of the site is owned by the city of High Point. So the applicants agreed that they will do an internal walking trail, and that will be extended from this portion of this site to Piedmont Parkway. There will be a gap of about 400 feet where there is no sidewalks. And we're hoping that once developments commence, the Transportation Department could look at that and possibly recommend to you possibly that last section of the sidewalk being extended. I would note there is a bridge there that's about 100 feet or so, and on that bridge there is a 4-foot wide sidewalk. But staff just thought that this was an excellent opportunity to try and extend that trail, and with the number of units, get some usability of that trail instead of having people trying to walk all the way down Empire to there. This would be an area that could certainly reduce that and encourage that walkability in this area.
Is there a way to, for lack of a better way, is there a way to prevent crossing straight into the greenway? Because it's a pretty...
There's a creek there.
I mean, I know that it's a pretty pristine section of the greenway, not that it's easy to
This is
damage that section of
the proposed master plan, and the area they have highlighted in that teal color, that is the floodplain. The stream, the perennial stream kind of runs right through here, but then you have a 500-year and 100-year floodplain, along with a bridge that they would have to construct to cross the stream. And they did not wish to incur that. So in trying to brainstorm as other ways of getting the public to that greenway, staff and negotiate with the applicant, you do your internal public trail system along with sidewalks along the extension of the street. But I had a chance to speak with our Parks and Rec Director, Mr. Tillery. He had no objections with the use of that portion of the city land for extension or a greenway connection to Piedmont Parkway, with the ultimate goal of having a connection to the Bicentennial Trail. We just thought that we should not miss this opportunity with this scale of development.
I think that's an excellent solution to it.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Shannon. Public hearing is open. We'll now hear from the applicant or applicant's representative.
Good evening. My name is Judy Stalder, 3735 Admiral Drive in High Point. And also here this evening to answer questions are Steve Webb from CPT Engineering, and from Deep River Partners, we have Steve Shavitz, Mark Shavitz, and Frank Brenner. We're here to present tonight for your approval a thoughtfully designed mixed-use community. We're proposing a unified residential apartment community with on-site amenities to the rear, and then along East Chester Drive, some non-residential uses that will serve that residential community, like restaurants, a microbrewery or distillery, animal care, internal access self-storage, and other uses with the residential community in mind, but also we'll have support services for Piedmont Center Business Park as well. There's a network of public and private streets with connections to Eastchester Drive and Empire Street, and that design has been studied and confirmed through a required traffic impact analysis. It's been reviewed by High Point DOT and NCDOT. We, as Mr. Shannon mentioned, we have development standards above and beyond the typical requirements of the ordinance, including a pedestrian network of sidewalks and trails that connect the residential and commercial tracts, as well as connection to the greenway. That includes sidewalks on both sides of the public streets, which would not be required by the ordinance, and the connection to Piedmont Parkway to get to the greenway was a great collaboration between staff and the developer to find a way to do it that wouldn't cost a mint or do environmental damage. So we thank them for their help on that. As you expect, Deep River Partners has worked diligently with staff to create a development that meets the high standards of the Eastchester corridor. However, we cannot comply with the suggestion to eliminate parking between the building and Eastchester, and here are a few of those reasons. First, eliminating the parking in front of the buildings is not a requirement of the Eastchester Overlay District. The adjacent property to the north and the south are both developed with parking between the buildings in Eastchester, and we did an informal survey of that section of Eastchester Drive between Penny Road and Gallimore Dairy Road. There are 28 buildings, and 21 of those 28 buildings have parking between the building and Eastchester Drive. And I don't think any of them look like a sea of parking. The Eastchester corridor does allow a variance from the 75-foot setback for buildings, but in this particular case, that's not going to work because we have two 60-inch drainage lines that go along the frontage of Eastchester Drive. So we couldn't change our building setback. However, there are some environmental challenges on the property. So to the north, where we have 7 acres that will not be developed, it'll just be for our water quality devices, and it'll be left pretty much undisturbed, but it will not be parking for sure. And to the south, there's a stream with stream buffers. So there's not going to be a sea of parking from one property line to the next. Eliminating the parking between buildings and Eastchester Drive amounts to a loss of over a half an acre of property that would not be able to be used. And that's in addition to the third of an acre on the south end on Eastchester Drive, the 7 acres on the northwest corner, and 6 acres that are in the flood area along the High Point property to the east. P&Z approved our plan unanimously without the parking restriction, and we hope that you see this development like we see it, as an opportunity for a premier mixed-use community at a prime location. And we ask for your approval of the request as submitted. Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yes, Judy, the loss of this parking, how would you say that it would impact the use of the project overall?
Well, it would limit the amount of development that we could actually do on the commercial part of the property, and we think that's as important to this mixed-use development as the residential is. It would just take, 35 feet across the front that we wouldn't be able to use, because we still can't move our buildings on those 60-inch drainage pipes, whereas we can put parking there.
Anyone else with questions for the applicant? Thank you, Ms. Stoller.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here to speak for or against this item? Okay, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. So, folks, I think we have a decision to make. I'm interested in some input from y'all regarding the parking request or regulation that the staff has proposed. What's your thought on that?
I would say, based on what Judy said, it's not inconsistent with the surrounding areas, what's already up and down that corridor, so I'm okay with P and Z's acceptance of it without the staff recommendation.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement. I think if we, we look at, I don't know what quantifies a sea of parking. I don't know what number of parking spaces that equates to. I just don't see limiting the ability of that functionality of that property. They're giving up a lot on each side of that development. So I don't see limiting that and taking away opportunities for parking. So I'm in favor of accepting P&Z's recommendation.
Anyone else with thoughts on parking? Okay, well then I will make a motion to approve it based on or approve it without the parking restriction. And I will adopt the consistency and reasonableness statement of the planning board in doing so. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for approval. Any further discussion?
I'd just like
Just
to say
excited. I think anytime you have development happen in a corridor where it makes sense, it's not lost on me. We have these conversations over and over again about needing more housing in our city. And so it excites me to have seen the number that's up here in terms of what's planned for units. And so I'm excited about that. I look forward to the developer continuing to work with staff to figure out the very best plan going forward.
My thought is this is exactly what we look for. This is a very good development and a very good location. I really appreciate taking advantage of the access to the Bicentennial Greenway. I think that's a real asset to this location. It looks like a project well thought out, well presented.
Anyone else like to speak on the motion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approval of this item, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion is adopted unanimously. Next item is zoning map amendment 23-11. I will open the public hearing. This is in regard to PEX Wendover LLC and Maria T. Montoya Couch.
Yes, Mayor and City Council, this is a request to amend a previously approved conditional zoning retail center district for a 35-acre tract of land located at the southeast corner of West Wendover Avenue and Penny Road. This site initially obtained zoning approval in 2021 to support a shopping center with various commercial uses and to also allow as part of it a multifamily development to the rear where it abuts a single-family subdivision. The applicant is requesting to amend two of the previously adopted zoning conditions, one regarding the number of access points, to reduce the number of access points on the Samet Drive extension from 5 to 4, and also to allow some flexibility in their landscaping along a portion of the Samet Drive extension. Regarding landscaping, there is a condition for a 20-foot wide type C planting yard. The applicant is proposing to keep that same standard, but allow an option for an alternate landscaping plan that can be approved by the planning director. And as part of that, fencing or a wall could be part of that, but not the only screening method. And as I previously noted, to reduce the number of access points to Samet Drive. This is an illustrative plan of what the applicant hopes could potentially be developed. They have not nailed down the final design, but the area for the landscaping was specifically in this area. No specific use is proposed here, but the applicant is looking for a larger commercial type use. And if that does come to fruition, that's going to face toward Wendover with the rear facing these 4 single-family homes to the rear. So that higher landscaping standard was part of the initial zoning approval, and this amendment just allows some flexibility in the manner in which that landscaping could be placed in. And the planning director would, if such an alternate plan is submitted, the planning director would have ultimate approval as to what needs to go there, or they meet that initial zoning condition. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this request at their April meeting and recommend approval by a vote of 8-0. That is a quick summary of this request. Are there any questions of staff at this time? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there someone here from is the applicant would like to be heard, or? Sure. Mr. Bunker, good to see you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor and members of City Council, for your time here tonight and for your public service to this community. My name is Dennis Bunker, and I live at 1140 Dilworth Crescent Road in Charlotte. I'm the petitioner for this project, and I'm joined tonight by one of the landowners, Ms. Maria Montoya, who has patiently worked with me for 3.5 years now on this project since October 15th of 2019, and that was before COVID, if some of you don't remember. Y'all unanimously approved this project for development on December 20th of 2021, and I appreciate that, and I'll thank you in advance for any consideration that you give tonight. Councilman Holmes, you've been a mighty advocate for this great project, and I appreciate that. You know, I think Herb described what we're trying to do here tonight very well, and Herb has always been very professional and expedient to work with. You know, regarding the 15 feet of additional buffer, the staff requested in the original rezoning, and that was in addition to the 10 feet called for in our ordinance. You know, we found that as we work with the market, we're realizing that the utility of these 15 feet is critical. And again, 10 feet is called for in the ordinance. And the future construction of Samet makes this a very thin and irregular shaped site. You know, also regarding the buffer width, the 5 houses south of Samet that Herb referred to, they've always supported this project. They've never opposed this project. So by their silence here tonight, or at least in the past, I have no idea if they're here tonight, they're also supportive of this request. One of them even sold us part of their land on our side of Samet for this development. And they've said that we won't recognize sitting on our front porch, residential front porch, whether it's 175 feet or 190. They also never intend to sit on their residential front porch. They want this to become commercial as soon as it possibly can, because they want the highest and best use of their land to be commercial, so they can sell it as a premium. So now they want to know what's taking so long, and at this point, that's a fair question. Sushil, thank you for your proactive solutions as we work through reworking these 15 feet. Second, we volunteered to close what was going to be a commercial access. Herb described that well. That was along Samet. And we did that so the city would not have to build a second roundabout. We felt like it was unnecessary, so we're saving the taxpayer some money there. And we never really saw any evidence that it was necessary, located just a couple hundred feet from the first roundabout. I thought there might be a little more fanfare being willing to close that commercial access, but because it's really difficult when you try to go get one, but I understand, shoes on the other foot, it's just very difficult to get an access when you need it. So we're happy to accommodate the city on what we feel like will be an underutilized, point of ingress, egress to that property. As for the status of Palladium South, we're currently waiting on the city to approve Samet Drive. And we've been told on numerous occasions that that's forthcoming, and we hope that to be the case now. The design of Samet has been in the works since y'all approved this project on December 20th of 21. That's 511 days. And counting from the Samet design approval, in addition to the 797 days that we worked on Samet leading up to that approval date. So we're coming up on 4 years working on this project, a city public road project this development doesn't need, but we thoroughly understood in our first meeting how important it was to the city, and we still get that. To put that in private dollars, we've been spending $821.92 a day in interest, not opportunity costs, just interest, since January 1. To put that in municipal terms, the city and county has probably missed out on 1.5 years of tax revenue on this estimated $100 million project. That's approximately $2.1 million. Either way, I'm paying them both, but I'd prefer to be paying real estate taxes now over interest. And I look forward to doing that. If I receive your favorable consideration tonight, we'll get on with it. We need Samet Design approved as soon as it can. Thank you again for your time tonight and your public service, and I'll make myself available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you, Mr. Bunker. Is anyone here to speak for or against this item? Okay. You may come forward to the lectern and give us your name and address. And if you have a question, maybe we can get it answered, but we need you to do it from up here so we can get it on the record. Okay. Just give us your name and address for the clerk, please.
I am Connie Valderay. I live at 2905 McLaurin Court in High Point. And I know the usage is very much in common with what's in that area. But my concern is about the traffic, because we already now, if you're turning off of Wendover onto Penny, there are times you can't even get onto Penny because of the light at Samet Drive. So are there accommodations being made for the traffic to not be as messed up as it already is?
Well, I think, that, I don't know if there's anybody here from transportation who might want to address it, but Greg, sorry. I get my Venables mixed up.
There are a lot of Venable boys out there.
But I think what he's going to tell you is that the construction of this section of Samet is part of what's going to relieve the traffic. But go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, and I've been called worse, by the way, so. So yeah, the development, we're really not here to talk about traffic, all that's been approved, but there will be some improvements that are going to be in place with the development. So there are going to be turn lanes, signal improvements at both ends of Samet Drive currently, so there will be improvements made.
Okay, yeah, that's all I was curious about.
Construction of this new section of Samet will help to diffuse the traffic in that area as well.
It will.
Kind of spread it out.
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll be it.
Design like there.
I understand. I understand.
Thank you.
No problem, no problem, thank you. Anyone else who'd like to speak on this item? Okay, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing, and I will make a motion for approval of this item, and I will adopt the consistency and reasonableness statement of the Planning and Zoning Board. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on this item? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item is zoning map amendment 23-08. That is Diversified Estate Holdings LLC. And public hearing's open. Mr. Shannon?
Yes, this is zoning map amendment case 2308. The applicant is requesting rezoning of a 9.7 acre parcel that's located west of the intersection of Penny Road and East Fork Road. This site currently has a conditional use agricultural zoning designation, and they're requesting rezoning to the conditional zoning in residential multifamily 16 to support a multifamily project. This slide depicts the adopted land use plan for this portion of the city. The site we just discussed is up here at the intersection of Wendover and Penny. Areas you see highlighted in red, the land use plan notes for commercial uses. The areas you see in a brown color are higher density multifamily, medium density residential. And the area you see highlighted in yellow, the land use plan notes as low density residential. And that supports primarily single family, but also allows townhomes. It could allow multifamily, but allows residential uses at a density of 5 units per acre. As you can see, the zoning site, which is right here at the intersection of East Fork and Penny, is a transitional location where the higher density, medium density land use transitions to lower density residential. I would note the land use map is not intended to be property line specific, but to note general land use policy for an area. And for this site, this is where the intensity of uses is to transition. With that medium density land use designation, it permits residential development, multifamily townhomes from densities of 8 to 16 units per acre. And that's a specific, as I previously noted, that area in yellow, low density, that permits developments up to 5 units per acre. This is the zoning map for that area. To the north, you have a combination of conditional zoning RM16 and R3 for a single-family home. That conditional zoning RM16 is a multifamily townhome, single-family development that is under construction. It was been approved for up to 481 multifamily units and 41 single-family homes. To the south, you have the Eagle Glen subdivision. That's single-story townhomes directly to the south of the site. To the east, these are lands that have not been annexed. It's within Guilford County. It has a zoning of residential single-family 40. And that county zoning, that RS40, meaning your minimum lot size is 40,000 square feet. And to the west, you have the Hickswood Forest development, which is a mixture of single-family and townhomes directly west of the site, or twin homes or townhomes that abut the site. Development options for this site is limited. This is a situation where all the flat, easy, unencumbered lands in the city have basically been developed. So now we're looking at some of our problem child properties that are just, quite frankly, difficult to develop. This is our color-coded zoning map. That's something we're introducing to help you get a better understanding of the zoning pattern of this area. And as you can see, to the north, there's a lot of multifamily as you transition from that commercial, and to the south, various residential developments. If you haven't had a chance to visit the site, it is encumbered by a Duke transmission easement, and this is a Google Pics of the site, and you see that transmission line that runs straight through the site. But the amount of land that is encumbered is even more than what you see just by those towers. There's a 150-foot wide Duke power easement that runs through the site, and no buildings can be placed in that area. So that pretty much leaves development to the northeastern portion of the site and the southeastern portion of the site. And you also have an enclosement here where you have some cellular towers. So you have that easement that runs through the site and just limits how you can use the site. Only about 40% of the site is usable for any type of building placement. The applicant would have to seek approval from Duke Power to put parking or across that easement, but no buildings can be placed in that area. Key issue that staff has with this request is based upon the land use classification and the surrounding development pattern, compatibility, as this is a transitional point, and intensity of development. This was the plan the applicant had submitted to the neighbors when they did their neighborhood meeting, and they were looking at 4-story buildings, a 56-unit building, and a 33-unit 4-story building in the northern portion of the site, and a 56-unit 4-story building at the southern portion of the site. Staff had concerns that it was just so intense and right up over the neighbors. When the development to the north was approved, that we had that similar concern, and we were able to negotiate with the applicant to have 100-foot setbacks where they abut lower intensity uses. But that was a larger piece of property, and they had more land to work with as far as setting buildings back. We don't have that luxury with this site. So staff had proposed in our initial staff report about 6 conditions to try and address these issues. We also had concerns as far as access point. This notes the general location of access points. To the development to the north, you're going to have 2 access points on Penny Road and a stub street for connection to the Hickswood Forest. Under this development, staff was pushing for an access point to Penny Road. The way the development ordinance reads, if there are more than 50 units, 2 points of access are required. Staff was concerned that unless there was a condition that says one of those access points has to be per Penny, you can just have 2 access points to the north, and then all traffic would go to those 2 access points to the north. We were just concerned that up to 600 units at those 2 access points was just too much, and there really need to be a condition that requires at least one of the access points be to Penny Road if there are more than 50 dwelling units. This is a depiction of what's been approved to the north, where you have 41 single-family homes, 327 multifamily in one phase, 154 in another phase, and on this site, which is highlighted in yellow, up to 145 dwelling units. So staff was really pushing, if we're going to support this, we need that access point at this location at a signalized intersection to provide as many alternatives as possible for access to the site. So when this case first went to the Planning and Zoning Commission in March, staff recommended denial because the applicant did not address our concerns. The commission continued it to their April meeting. The applicant offered a few additional conditions, but our concerns still were not being addressed. So at the April meeting, staff again recommended denial of the request, and the Planning and Zoning Commission at that meeting also recommended denial by a vote of 8-0. Some of the key concerns staff noted was that the proposed RM16 district does not result in development that is compatible with the abutting lower intensity uses to the south. There were not sufficient conditions to provide appropriate buffering, in our opinion. There was concerns that the mass of building, just the bulk and height, especially to the south, there was no condition to ensure that they wouldn't tower over those adjacent lower intensity and single level development. And there was no guarantee that at least one of the access points, if you're going to have more than 50 units, is going to be to Penny Road. So at that time, staff had recommended denial at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Since then, the applicant has met with staff several times and went over those 6 initial conditions that we proposed from the beginning to try and provide some compatibility, and they have admitted their application. Regarding a conditional zoning plan that binds how the site's going to develop, they have not offered that as a condition. To the southern boundary of the site next to that townhome development, staff had proposed conditions to restrict building height, building length, and higher setbacks. We did throw out an option at the Planning and Zoning Commission for the board to consider that maybe the southern half of the site be rezoned to the RM5 district to further ensure lower intensity development. Since the Planning and Zoning Commission, the applicant has offered to, along the southern half of the site, where they were initially proposing a 56-unit building, they have a condition that no more than 33 units, whether it's townhomes or multifamily, could build on the southern part of the site, and they've locked in that maximum building height of 50 feet with a pitched roof. Under the RM16 district, there is no maximum height. If you're over 50 feet, there's additional setback, but you can go as high as you wish. So they've locked down that. So initially, they were looking at a 4-story building to the south. Now it's a 3-story building. We were hoping that it could be 2-story, but with that reduction in density to 33 units, that kind of addresses the concern as far as the intensity. And they've offered a condition that the maximum building length cannot be more than 200 feet. These conditions are pretty much what the RM5 district would allow. The only difference would be the density, where if the southern half of the site was RM5, they're going to be at a density of about 24 units. The applicant has proposed 33 units, but staff felt that was a significant reduction from the 56-unit, 4-story building that was initially proposed along the southern portion of the site. They've also offered conditions to the north next to that R3 zone area. That is a historic property on the Guilford County historic properties. Staff had also had conditions about restricting building length, building height, increasing setbacks. The applicant has offered a condition that from Penny Road, there's only a 20-foot building setback. The applicant has offered to increase that setback from 20 feet to 250 feet. That basically pushes development far enough past that historic property that our concerns regarding mass and height are being taken care of. Now, the way the condition reads is no multifamily structure can be located within 250 feet of Penny Road. You could have garages or accessory structures, but those are typically going to be lower 1-story type structures. There were several concerns staff had about landscaping, and we recommended higher landscaping standards to the southern boundary of the site. We had recommended our Type B planting yard, which is 10 trees and 25 shrubs every 100 linear feet. The applicant has revised their conditional zoning ordinance to a Type C yard. That has an average width of 25 feet, but they proposed that 50% of that planting be evergreens. The ordinance does not require any landscaping to the south. So this is a higher landscaping standard, and we've also worked with the applicant that if they wish to propose an alternate landscaping plan, that could be approved by the planning director. That alternate plan would be focusing on the placement of materials, not how much. They still have to put in the same amount of landscaping. That alternate plan would allow the director to approve alternate placements. And they've offered a condition that there be a fence, a 6-foot-high screening fence behind the building. In that alternate plan, the fence can't be your only screening. You still have to have the landscaping. The northern boundary of the site next to that R3 zone property, the applicant has offered a similar condition, type C planting yard, with 50% of that material being evergreen. So they've kept that condition, but that setback of 250 feet really relieves a lot of the concerns that staff had along that Penny Road frontage of the site. Staff was also recommending a higher landscaping standard, or street landscaping yard, to go to the type C standard. The applicant did not agree to that higher standard along Penny Road. And finally, the transportation conditions. One of the key reasons why staff initially recommended denial was there was not a guarantee that if there's over 50 units, you're going to have an access point to that signalized intersection of Penny Road. So the applicant has agreed to that condition, that at least one of the access points is going to be to Penny Road, and there would be intersection improvements where they got to modify that signal from a 3-way to a 4-way signal, and that there would be turn lanes into the site. This is an illustrative plan of what could be developed, and I would note for the public, these plans that have been proposed, that you've seen, they're illustrative. They're not binding. But the conditions that the applicant proposed would push them closer to this layout. So you have that 250-foot setback from Penny Road. That eliminates the situation where you had that 4-story building right next to the historic property. Initially, we had up a 15-foot setback to the south. That is now 30 feet. That was a 56-unit building, is now 33. It could be a 3-story building, but the length could not exceed that 200 feet, and we do have the higher landscaping standards. So based upon those updated conditions that were offered after the planning and zoning public hearing, staff is now recommending approval of the request. Based upon these amended conditions, staff finds that the request as conditioned is consistent with adopted policy guidance. As conditioned, the request does not significantly conflict with the land use plan or other adopted policy guidance. And as conditioned, the higher building setbacks, higher buffer, higher landscaping, and access conditions would allow the request to be a reasonable use for this piece of property. Staff did not get everything that we desired for this site, but the applicant has come a long way from the initial proposal. You know, we were pushing for just a 2-story building to the south, but with that higher setback, reduction in building intensity, and almost meeting all the R5 district standards, staff is of the opinion we have a better proposal now than we had a month ago. That's a brief summary of the staff recommendations. I know it's a lot of information. There's been a lot of changes. So this isn't your typical case where you may just do one change. There are about 8, 9 different changes. You do have in front of you that updated conditional zoning ordinance, and we've highlighted in bold the changes that have occurred since the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. But we're more than happy to address any questions you may have.
Has members of the Planning and Zoning Commission seen these new changes?
No. All of these changes came after the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Is there a process where, because of the significant nature of the changes of this project, it would need to go back before Planning and Zoning?
It is not required, but if the City Council feels that this is a significant enough difference from what the Planning and Zoning Commission initially saw, you have the ability to refer it back to Planning and Zoning Commission. That is a decision you would have to make. It's not a requirement of the development ordinance.
That's what we did with the Leo Terra one. They asked if they could do that. We did do that.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you. We'll now hear from the applicant or applicant's representative.
My name is Judy Stalder, 3735 Admiral Drive in High Point, and also here to answer your questions is Scott Wallace of Keystone Properties. And to answer your question, 2 of the Planning and Zoning Commission members have called me and thanked me for helping to work on this and get these conditions changed. But I hope that my presentation will sort of explain to you how this progressed. I believe that Keystone now has an application that you can approve that protects the adjacent homes while allowing adequate room for developing housing at 1711 Penny Road. We've worked closely with Mr. Shannon since the last P&Z meeting to craft an appropriate plan for this site, and I hope that you see the enormous effort made by the developer. It's a challenge these days, trying to provide housing with only infill development opportunities available. This one's pretty challenging. There's going to be a lot more. I hope they're not all like this, but the Duke Power easement, the communication tower, plus one easement that wasn't shown, which is an access easement from Penny Road along the south property line to the communication towers. There's RM16 on one side, adjacent to single-family residential, and RM5 townhomes on the south side. We began this project like we would with any other project, and that's looking at best and highest use, which would be the RM16. We are fully committed to combining this with the RM16 property to the north, and it was going to be developed in conjunction with that. Staff pointed out their concerns with the RM5, but we often add conditions after meeting with the neighbors. So we scheduled our citizen information meeting prior to the first public hearing at a similar apartment community so that we could show the neighbors what it would look like in reality. We also provided contact information in the letter of invitation so that anyone that couldn't attend the meeting could contact us. One person attended that meeting, and she lived on the other side of Penny Road from the project. I got a call from one other person prior to the first Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and they were concerned about the communication tower. So we really didn't get any feedback from the neighborhood until we got to that first Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. We tried to add some conditions at that meeting, but the Planning and Zoning Commission were unsure if they could allow any changes at the meeting. So we submitted those further conditions after that meeting. After the second hearing, we had a little bit better reading on what needed to be done, and we met with our project engineer so that he could revise the plan to what you see today, and the proposal that we're presenting now. With that plan, Mr. Shannon went to work on it and came up with some more conditions to try to ensure that we would meet those conditions, meet that plan with the conditions. And Mr. Shannon has gone through those conditions pretty well, but I want to point out a few things. We reduced the number of homes on the south side by 40%, from 56 to 33. We reduced the height of the building by 25%, or the stories of the building by 25%, and we doubled the setback from the property line. As a result of the revised conditions, we're actually RM5 essentially on the south side, except for density. We're 1.75 units per acre higher in density. The 30-foot setback from the property line results in a separation of our proposed building to the closest existing building is 90 feet. That's the closest point. It gets further from there. And the 30-foot setback allows for landscaping that we couldn't commit to when we had we still had to deal with that access easement along the southern property line. On the north side, we have worked with Mr. Briggs from the beginning of the project, and the 250-foot setback removes that larger building away from his home And the planting yard will incorporate plantings that honor the historic designation of his property. The landscaping and the one-story garages that are along his property line provide an additional visual separation for him. And finally, to address Penny Road, we always felt like those transportation conditions would come in during the technical review committee process, but for extra insurance, they're now part of the zoning conditions. So there will be a required access point to Penny Road at the East Fork intersection. Right and left turn lanes will be developed with appropriate storage and taper, and the developer would be responsible for signal modifications to change it from 3 points to 4 points. As I said before, I believe that Keystone now has an application that can be approved, allowing for the development of housing while still protecting adjacent homes through the enormous effort of both the developer and your staff. Keeping in mind that infill development is always going to be difficult, I'd like to conclude by saying the site south of the transmission line is now essentially RM5. The historic property to the north, with the additional landscaping and protective setbacks, is going to be protected, and all the transportation improvements, including the intersection improvements and turn lanes, are now part of the conditions. So we ask for your approval of this request. We know it's a long and arduous process, and we don't usually operate in this way, but we do appreciate staff's help in getting to this point. Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant?
I just had one about the Duke Power easement. In terms of requesting any usage of that, since there's no buildings that can go there, what exactly can occupy that space?
Parking.
Just a
Parking and driveways can be in that space. And we will have to work with Duke for approval of the location of those.
Anyone else with a question?
Can I follow up and then have one more? On that, have you applied for that ability from Duke Power yet, and what's that process look like?
We have not applied for that, and I'm not sure about that process.
But that would have to be something approved before.
Yeah, it has to be approved by Duke Power before TRC can approve any of the plans.
And Judy, there were two conditions. One of them was about the binding zoning plan, and then one more that y'all couldn't come to agreement on. Can you expound on those two?
The binding zoning plan is a little difficult because if you run into something like Duke Power says we have to move our parking and driveways somewhere, we may have to shift the buildings, and then we would have to go back through the 60 to 90-day process to get that approved rather than just going to staff or TRC for that approval. So binding site plans are difficult unless you have unless you've done a lot of engineering up front. And with all the challenges of this property, that would be expensive to do without knowing if we could go any further than this.
But if you do run into that, you are going to have to come back for those type of changes to staff and TRC.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it would all hinge on what TRC approved. And all of that will be in place and all the engineering done by the time we get to TRC approval. The second one, what was that second condition? It was additional landscaping along Penny Road. And that was to screen the building. And since we moved the building 250 feet away from the road, there's not going to be anything up there to screen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, Ms. Dollar.
Thank you.
Okay, several people have signed up to speak. I will call out those folks who signed up to speak, and if you're not signed up, you'll still have the opportunity after everyone who's already signed up has had the opportunity to go first. First person is Wayne Matlows. Did I say that right?
Yes, sir.
All right.
My name's Wayne Matlows, M-A-T-L-O-S-Z. I live at 2917 Eagle Point Drive in High Point. It can be argued that Yogi Berra was a great catcher, but he made some great quotes that made him more famous, and one of them is, "It's like deja vu all over again." And that's what we went to in the meeting with Planning and Zoning on March 28th. Last minute, there was changes made. Now, we were afforded the opportunity to see those changes, but at the end of the day, it was still denied. It was actually, they were given a continuance, which I think was extremely generous of the Planning and Zoning Board to get with staff in 30 days and come up with something. At 30 days, we all came to the meeting, nothing. That's why it was 8-0. I think their generosity was hurt in that. Now we come at the 11th hour again with changes. And as I'm going to explain through here, and I don't profess to be a city planner, but at the March 28th meeting, I brought up about traffic on Penny Road and utilizing the Department of Transportation's data points. And I don't think a lot of people know, but the Penny Road section between Wendover and this property is the third most traveled road in North High Point. Since 2010, somebody's been talking about on all the committees and economic development and everything about widening Penny Road since 2010, and nothing's been done. Ski Club's been done. Johnson Street's been done. Johnson Street and Sandy Ridge are going to be done in 2024. The extension of Ski Club out to North Main is going to be done. So we've got a real problem there, and this is really before the first apartment for this complex, the first car going into Palladium South and Evolve and the other apartments that are going up on North High Point. Like I said, I don't profess training in city planning. I use the information that's readily available to me, including council minutes and building permits through Acela, the citizen access. I have to remember we're discussing zoning, that the sketch plans that are presented are not binding. Things can change. At the March meeting, I was reminded by Mr. Briggs' statement that the original sketch plans for the first 3 phases of the project call for the apartments to be located on the northern portion of the property. There were 456 units to be built as per this site plan in 2018. 297 included 9 3-story apartment buildings, which was 65% of the projected units would be apartments. The remainder being townhomes, 159. That's 12 units per acre. As other documents in 2018 state, the townhomes would be similar in construction as the trellises. Eagle Glen, where I live, is far enough away that we were not formally informed of the zoning proposal. But who could argue about $300,000 townhomes being built as a neighbor? City Council approved this request in September 2018. On September 10th, 2020, a land use preliminary subdivision was approved for 41 single-family lots and 551 multifamily apartments. That's from the Acela Citizens Access. This totally changes the original zoning site plan. It added 254 apartments and strips away all the townhomes from the original site plan of 2018. Now we're talking about adding another 145 apartments to this project. That would be a total of 696 apartments and just 41 single-family homes. There are 13 apartment buildings on this new plan. Some are 4 stories tall. The sketch plan presented today shows 7 of those buildings, and I just wonder where the other 6 apartments are, buildings, and the 41 single-family homes. All of the apartments are now on the southernmost portion of the project. Perhaps if this was the plan in 2018, more neighbors to the south and west in Hickswood Forest, for example, would have been formally notified and a larger contingency of objections would have been heard by the planning board and council. We've gone from 455 units in the original Keystone request on 38 acres to 737 units on 46.6 acres, 94% of which are apartments. That's 15.35 units per acre. Respectfully ask that you continue this denial, at least we get to the point that we agree that this projects have gotten out of hand with a number of units on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Yvonne Matlos. Oh, he got it, okay. All right. Laurie Mendenhall.
Oh, were you going to speak next? Okay. I'm sorry.
Laurie Mendenhall.
Unless you're Laurie. No, no, go ahead. That's okay.
Hey, everyone. I'm not going to waste a lot of your time because I did send you an email this morning. I was not going to be able to be here, but as you can see on this map, all of these extra apartments are going to dump down into, well, not on this map, but into the other map, are going to dump down and have an exit to come out of that housing area that they're going to build into Hickswood Forest. My husband is a runner. He's on these streets every day. He knows how many cars come through our neighborhood. He runs through Eagle Glen. He runs all through Hickswood Forest. I live on Eagleston Court. This is so far out of my comfort zone, just so you know, I'm a little nervous. But I just don't see how we can build this many apartments and it not be a problem for us in our neighborhood. We don't have sidewalks. These neighborhoods were not required to have sidewalks when they were built. You know, if we had sidewalks, that would be fine. We have young families moving into our neighborhood, kids that play on the street. Even I have to pay more attention because I'm not the best driver out there. So I just hope that you guys will send this back to at least the planning committee. And I don't see how this can work under the Duke power lines. And I would really like for them to have to apply to that before this is approved. Thank you.
Ma'am, excuse me, ma'am. Hey, ma'am, not you, this ma'am. I'm calling the folks who signed up first.
Okay, I thought they had all been called.
Never
Are there
mind.
more?
Never
Okay.
mind. And then I'll get to you, I promise, I won't forget you. Next person who signed up was Bill Jones. Mr. Jones, still here? There we go.
We have a clock?
You don't have a clock, but you don't have forever.
Okay. Well, no, if you go to a county commissioner meeting, it's 3 minutes.
Yeah.
God forbid. Yes, I will, like the gentleman in the blue shirt, I was not formally informed of this. You know, I was a brand new parent. I was still learning to be a parent. Bill Jones, 3643 Hickswood Forest Drive. Sorry, I'm a little nervous like Lori is. But trying to get the nervous nillies out. Ever seen the movie Tommy Boy? Yeah? The question was, were you raised in a power lines? Dan Aykroyd asked that question on Tommy Boy. Great movie, by the way. So let's keep that in mind. In the 90s, adults were a little bit more intelligent. Sorry. But yeah, I live on Hickswood Forest Drive. I have seen cars speed through the neighborhood. It's not the people that live in the neighborhood that speed, it's the people that are going from Hickswood Forest Road to Penny Road, up on Woodlawn, off Woodlawn. So I was walking the dog, and this was just recently, I was walking the dog with my 3-year-old, and I could hear the muffler, and it was a GMC. I remember GMC with chrome wheels. But I could hear the muffler, and he revved that bad boy up. He must have been going at least 50 miles an hour on a road that should be 20 miles an hour. Now, add an additional potential 100 houses going into that apartment rental community that was supposed to be townhomes. I fear for not only my children, but the kids that play in the neighborhood. So I'm hoping you revisit this situation and say, look, we cannot have this neighborhood having cars going through it. I really do. So, but that's all I have to say. All right? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Reed Nifong?
Mr. Mayor, Board, my name is Reed Nifong. I live at 3948 Cobblestone Bend Drive, and I'm together with some neighbors that I have. And I have letters actually from 4 folks in our neighborhood, Eagle Glen, who because of work or travel could not be here tonight. We all have the same kind of feeling that the congestion and the density level is going to be a lot in an area that's already being stressed and heavily developed. And I appreciate what Wayne Matlins, who I know, brought to the table and as far as the statistics. But one thing I'd like to share is when the gentleman from the zoning board brought up the photo of the site, and the view to the right of the image was a row of rooftops, which is the row of rooftops of those homes at the bottom of the image there on the screen right now. And even at 2 stories, those buildings that are built up there will be basically doing this to us and overshadowing the department on our side. With the placement of the parking lots, we're also concerned about water runoff because we have problems in that area, and a drainage culvert basically runs again along that back line of Eagle Glen down toward the end. So those are my concerns. I think other people have spoken well to other areas I have concern about, and I'll wrap up at that point, and I thank you.
If you, Mr. Nifong, if you would like, you can give a copy of those letters to the clerk.
Thank you.
And we can put those in for the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff Jones, I'm sorry, wrong one. Diana Engel.
Mr. Mayor and Board, I'm Diana Engel, and I live at 3971 Sorrel Court. So we're right by Eagle Glen, our neighborhood. Something that hasn't really been addressed, well, first of all, of course, not only are we talking about this parcel of land, but we also know there is a huge parcel of land across from Florence Elementary, which is going to be, again, multi-level family housing. It's going to create a lot of traffic congestion along Penny Road. So in thinking about this smaller, narrower parcel tonight, I'm hoping that you will reconsider about saying yes to rezoning, because just to keep within your mind that there is going to be another quite large development that is going to create congestion. I'm also very concerned as a mother of a Florence Elementary student, she's now 26, that knowing that there are mobile units, there are trailers already at Florence since my daughter was attending there, and now we are going to potentially increase an overcrowded situation at Florence Elementary. The infrastructure that will be needed for Florence, with families moving in who have school-age children, that will put pressure on Florence Elementary. That hasn't been brought up yet. I'm sorry about my hands hitting the mic. Sorry about that. I was really glad to hear about the stormwater runoff. That is something that was just recently mentioned. That is definitely a concern. I really think that this is just when you look at the towers, the communication towers, when you look at the power lines, knowing that even with that there's a little bit of a controversy that comes up with that. The concern about the proximity of power lines and towers to families who would be living close to those towers. Research is inconclusive about negative health effects. when it comes to the strength of the electromagnetic field and exposure. Exposure is definitely highest when you are in close proximity to power lines, but the nature of that land, the towers, the power lines going through, that is concerning as well. So it's just essentially, in a nutshell, because we're also thinking at the same time about the very large piece of land across from Florence. Right, that's not under consideration tonight. I do realize that is already going to become multifamily. But that is going to put continued pressure on traffic, and that is going to also increase the student population, most likely at Florence Elementary. And I wanted to bring up those concerns. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Engel. Okay, ma'am, it's your turn.
I'm a former teacher, so I wait my turn. I didn't sign up to speak.
Just give us your name and address.
Can you hear me? My name is Brenda Krieger, and I live at 2918 Eagle Point Drive in the property adjacent to the proposed development. And my former husband out here also lives there on the opposite side. We're divorced, friends. He'll be 87 in July. I will be 80 in August. I still work. Many of these people right out here are from Eagle Glen, and a lot of them are in their 70s. There's no traffic light at the entrance to Eagle Glen. So it was built in 2001, our development, and there are many, many people on that road already. The school there, the church there, this huge development they're about to build right across the street. The Piedmont Environmental Center is right down Penny Road, and the Walmart Super Center, or neighborhood center with some other commercial buildings, are right near the entrance, but on Penny Road. There is already too much traffic there. I would not like to see any of my neighbors or myself or my former husband or anyone be killed in an accident because they can't access Penny Road without taking a chance. I'm hoping that you will deny any development, however smooth their presentation was. We don't need any more people and cars moving onto Penny Road. It's not a divided highway, as you know. So please deny this development. Would you want your parents? There are 138 units where we live, and many of the people are elderly. Would you want your parents having to struggle to get in and out of traffic on Penny Road, and yet another crowded development right next door? I hope that you will deny this and deny it for good. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Just come forward and make a line, and Mr. Briggs, I recognize you. Come on over. Give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Benjamin Briggs. I live at 1753 Penny Road. I'm in the vacant square in the side of that picture, so this is surrounding me. I just want to affirm to City Council that this is a historic house. I've lived there for 25 years. My great-great-great-grandfather bought the property in 1878. If it ever leaves my ownership, it will be preserved through a preservation easement. So there will be no cashing in. I've been before you all for other historic preservation issues. I practice what I preach. So this will not be, my acreage will not be turned into an apartment building. That being said, I have worked with Scott and Judy on ideas to buffer around the property, and I think the design that you see before you today represents removal of that four-story building from my southern property line and creates more of a buffer around it. I realize that development's going to happen, I never, ever imagined this was going to happen around my house, but I recognize that development's going to happen. So I just hope that as this property has evolved and the design has evolved, this is the third iteration, that the element of buffering be maintained in terms of the setback from Penny Road of the larger building and planting yards that are evergreen. So I just wanted to affirm to you all that I'm not going to sell out. This property, if it leaves my ownership, will be preserved using a preservation easement. House is older than High Point itself. The house was built in 1843, and it was an important house of the village of Florence, which was aligned along Penny Road, and I'm working with Mr. Fensel to get that plaque put there. So you might see a plaque soon related to that historic village. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Briggs. Yes, ma'am. Just give
I'm
us your
Natalie
name and
Van
address.
Hook. Oh, sorry.
Give us your name and address for the record. Go ahead.
Okay, Natalie Van Hook. I'm at 3974 Haynesbrook Court. I'm in Hickswood Forest. I'm an elementary school teacher, but I'm used to talking to little people. So this is out of my comfort zone. Thank you for listening to us today. And this area, as you can see, traffic is the big issue, the traffic coming through our neighborhood. We're concerned about Hickswood Forest, primarily Hickswood Road. There's a lot of traffic. We're concerned about traffic coming in and out. There's a lot of people who cut through, coming through Penny Road, cutting through our neighborhood, using it as a cut through to access our neighborhood, and there's a lot of noise at night and things of that nature. That's a concern. Now, with an access point coming through those apartments, coming down that road, that's going to be a big issue. The sewer systems in our neighborhood, they were not put in properly, apparently, initially. I know there's 2 sewers on my property line, and they were not installed correctly, and I've lived there since 2004. We had to pay to have the city of High Point come and correct them. We had to pay a fee. We paid, I think it was a couple of $100s for each sewer to be. I think they came out, and the city of High Point came and brought a big, huge machine, and they corrected the problem. But they also did something when they put a new sewer line for this new development. Apparently there was some kind of issue with that because there was water leaking. So we have concerns there are many concerns, the sewer systems, the traffic. We just hope this doesn't happen without a lot more thought. Thank you for listening to us today.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this item?
Connie Valderay, 2905 McLaurin Court. I'd just like to say, I think it is grossly, grossly unfair for the developer to come in and present a plan that has not been presented to the public. They did it in the May meeting, and now they're doing it again. And I think it should never go to you without an approval from the Zoning Commission and input from the community to see that plan before it gets voted on. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing then, and I'll open the floor to the council for discussion and possible action.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I was going to address a few points that I think were brought up in some of the public hearing things.
Okay.
First comment, I believe Mr. Nightfall mentioned the stormwater. I think it's a valid concern. However, in most of the developments, been on this for 6 years. Most of the time, we've seen developments that had stormwater runoffs in their neighborhood. The TRC required water mitigation measures of the new development actually lessened the flooding and things that we've seen in the current development. So I do think there's some benefit. There is some benefit to the watershed mitigation efforts of the new development. The schools, as I was emailing with Ms. Mendenhall earlier today, that we're not allowed to consider that. That's not legal for us to consider. The traffic, there is some benefit that I've heard from people, and I'm sure Mike's heard from more than I have since his district for many years, that Penny Road is congested and there's a lot of traffic. You know, my office is right there. I used to own a tanning salon right there on Penny Road years ago. And so it's been long needed. Projects like this do provide the funding to expand those roads and add intersections and things to kind of make the traffic. I think that there's some value add to some of those. I do think this one has challenges. We've seen it before with the easement, and most of the potential uses for this piece of property are off the table because of the easement. And I think, I don't doubt that this was denied the way that it was in P&Z. I think that, I don't know that there's going to be a better plan for this than this land than what we're seeing now, other than possibly less dense. But I think we do have some valid arguments for the development. I do think there's also some challenges to develop this property. So I lean on the other 8 of you guys. We got to listen to all of these factors and figure out what's the best move here.
Yeah, I think I had a couple of concerns really regarding the easements. And I want to thank the developer for making some major concessions to get these into staff concerns. My major concern is that that P&Z, that this came after the P&Z recommendation. So normally when these things come before us, we consider staff recommendation, we consider P&Z recommendations. And now what we have is conflicting recommendations from staff, and because P&Z never saw these changes, we have a denial in P&Z and we have an approval from staff. And then I think with the contingency of the Duke Power consideration for whatever can be done there, and if you guys can enlighten me, because I don't know if I missed it or not, this development won't be able to go forward if Duke Power doesn't grant you full access to that easement. Is that correct? For the use that you needed, if I'm not.
Right. We have to apply to Duke Power for permission to use that easement for parking, but it's not unusual. There are, I don't know, I found 40 properties where there's parking under a Duke Power easement, one of them nearby this area. So it's not something that's typically denied, but it is something that is required.
So I'm sympathetic to both sides, and I know how difficult these types of developments for these particular types of lands are. The probability of them getting developed is much lower than easier to develop lands. I am sympathetic to the citizens who are in this area for just now seeing this now. I don't think any of you are expressly anti-growth of the city. I don't think any of you are anti-expressly development of lands. I do think that you would like to have been considered with some of these new changes. What I would like to see how these new changes would be taken by our planning and zoning board. I don't know if that's something that, I think we've done it once before. And I know I don't want to add any additional time to developers, but this is a very sensitive subject. This is the quality of life of people who live in this area. And, I don't think it's too much to ask to submit that. There also has to be some other things to go on, like requests from Duke Power that hasn't begun yet. So I think there's time. If I'm reading this correctly, I think there's time for people to get familiar with these new changes. I think there's time for P&Z to weigh in, and I also think there's time for further work and communication between everyone there. I like the changes that are made. I think they've moved a long way to getting this site ready to be developed, which is expressly needed in our area, considering the population growth of North High Point. So for those folks who live around you, we need housing, and I don't want you to be misled about that. The growth of our city and the growth of specifically of this district is very high, and we're going to need housing for the people to come. So if we have developers who are willing to come in and work with staff in the city, this council is inclined to support development. We want to make sure that it balances the best possible use of the land and the mitigate the impact to your quality of life. But we do have to consider that they legally purchased the land. They have every right to develop it. We just have to make sure that it's the best use for everyone. And it's not going to be perfect. Some of you are going to be upset. The developer may be upset because I'm asking them to take a little bit more time. But these things are difficult, and these are not something that we take lightly. Your lives and the development of our economy shouldn't be at odds with each other. So that's going to be my request, and I'll turn it over to council for further.
Are you making a motion?
Not yet. I wanted to hear from other members of council before I did make that motion.
Is there any other comment?
I'd like to make a comment.
Yes, Ms. Speaker.
Okay, so I totally agree with you, Council Member Holmes. I totally commend staff and the developer for working together and trying to, see how you can work together. And then I also am very appreciative to the people that came out and spoke. This is your neighborhood. But like Councilmember Holmes said, we are in dire need of housing. That is a highly developmental area. But I do think it would be in our best interest, in everyone's best interest, to let P&Z have the opportunity to look at it again. So I'm in total agreement, and I actually will make the motion that it be brought up to P&Z.
Second. Okay, there's a motion and a second to refer this item back to the Planning and Zoning Board for another hearing. Is there any discussion on that motion?
I just want to clarify, just for everybody to understand, I think we're hearing you loud and clear that you want P&Z to weigh in on this, and that you felt like some of these changes were made after the buzzer, so to speak. And so I think the best way for everybody to feel like everything was heard from an optic standpoint, transparency standpoint, this is Councilman Holmes' district, so I want to support whatever you say, and this is kind of what he alluded to. We're going to send this back to the planning zone and let you guys state what you just stated to us again, and see if this decision is the same as it was with the original plans, and then we'll weigh in once planning and zone's had an opportunity to look at. I think that's in your best benefit, and I'll support you on that, Monica.
Any other discussion on the motion?
Well, I will add, just for clarification, I think Ms. Stalter will probably say this as well, that Duke Energy tends to not give hypothetical approvals to things. Mm-hmm. This has to be approved, but then you go to them for their approval. So I wouldn't expect Duke Energy to approve a hypothetical.
Any other discussion from the council? Okay, all in favor of the motion to remand this back to the Planning and Zoning Board for another recommendation, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Yes.
Just one thing for the public. With your direction for the remand back to Planning and Zoning Commission, that'll be the fourth Tuesday in June. Staff will commit to send out a new round of mail notice. We mail notices to all property owners within 300 feet. So we will do another mailing for that Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, so that the members of the public have that specific date.
And also, if you don't get notice, it's only folks within 300 feet. So, but all that is on our website as well.
Yes.
If you have questions and you don't get a notice, you can still go to the website and find it. Okay. Mr. Moore?
You stole it.
I stole it?
No,
Okay.
that 300 is state.
That's state law.
That's
Actually,
state
it's in
law.
excess of state law.
The state requires we notify all property owners within 100 feet. The city does all property owners within 300 feet.
Did y'all hear that, just so you know? State law's 100 feet, and we're 3 times that, which may not be enough either, but it's 3 times better than the state. And also, I'd like to just say for the record that, I've lived here my whole life. The school question comes up all the time, and it's very valid. It's very, very valid. But that's the purview of several decades of a Guilford County School Board that has tremendously failed. So those things need to be addressed by them. And then transportation's always the chicken and the egg. Do you 4-lane the road and do everything you gotta do for millions and millions of dollars, and then the development doesn't come? And how soon can you get it done? And these state roads, again, are governed by the state, and they got a list that's so long, and you try to get them up and in. So those are things that we're all battling. And, I grew up in what was the country years ago, if you will, North High Point, right there at Ocala Lake. And the properties all around us got demolished to put in the lake. There was all kinds of upheaval about that. But progress is going to happen. But we certainly appreciate this developer and all he's done and doing for us economically here. They do a great job. But we want to encourage the continuity, if we can, and the understanding that these infill properties they're going to get filled at some point.
Yeah.
And striking that balance is important, and having the discussion is important. But for-profit business is in business to make a profit.
All right, next item is text amendment 23-02. I'll hear from staff. Public hearing is open on that item.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Sam Hennett with the Planning and Development Department. Bear with me one second as I pull up the presentation. All right. Staff would like to provide just a quick summary of the proposed text amendment, and then I'll be available for any questions. This is part of the, oops, sorry, I pulled up the wrong presentation. Bear with me. 5:15, all right. My apologies. This should be it. All right. So this is part of our regular assessment for improvement and clarification to the city's development ordinance. This is the 10th round of general amendments to the development ordinance since it was rewritten in 2017. Text Amendment 2302 was initiated and reviewed by staff, as you see on your screen. Went to the Prosperity and Livability Commission back on April the 5th. We had internal discussions with both Trebeck and staff back in April. The item went to Planning and Zoning Commission, also back in April, at the end of April. We had another round of city and Trebeck discussions based on the text amendments that were proposed, and now we're here at City Council tonight. The general text amendment does have 7 sections, so bear with me. I'm going to try to fly through them if possible. Here are the 7 proposed text amendments. Of the 7 sections, 3 sections are correcting clerical errors. 2 sections provide updates to reflect current trends, and 2 sections had considerable discussions at P&Z. The key issues focused on the items on the screen, numbers 1 and 7. I do want to point out also that Section 7, which is utility standards for residential accessory structures, that was removed from the P&Z recommendation. So their recommendation was solely for 1 through 6, and that was an 8-0 recommendation. Section 1, I hate to say it's a little bit timely, but it's a little bit timely. Section 1 has 2 parts. Those 2 parts are shown on your screen, and they are the changes to conditions for planned development and conditional zoning. I don't want to go too in-depth. What was proposed to the P&Z was 10 business days, and that is in your P&Z's recommendation. That has subsequently, through some discussions, been changed to 8 business days, which does align with the city clerk and city management's calendar. So that does allow 8 business days to get to you. And so on here, you do see the change, which does reflect the 8 business day. Section 2 is quite simply just a clerical error. The watershed variance, flow chart, the 2 items shown in black were accidentally removed from one of the previous text amendments, so we're just correcting that staff error. Section 3 is another, just a clerical error, adding number 3 back in instead of number 1 for the building standards. Section 4 was a pretty substantive text amendment. The mixed-use downtown district requires, as well as the mixed-use Washington district, does require 12-foot sidewalks within those 2 zoning districts. And the TRC did receive some feedback from the development community and others. So we took that into account. We took a pretty detailed study and analysis, several walking tours of the mixed-use downtown and mixed-use Washington zoning districts, and we got city management recommendation. We brought that to P&Z back on the 25th, and we do have a map which shows the changes. The changes are for the streets in yellow. Those specific streets, which are relatively small local streets, the majority of them, the change would be going from 12 feet down to 8 feet, but that's only for the streets in yellow. The 12 feet sidewalk requirement would still remain in effect in the streets shown in blue on your screen. The next item, Section 5, within the text amendment is really a clerical error. Once again, just ensuring that there's no misunderstanding about what the definition of a triplex and quadplex is in comparison to a single-family attached dwelling, which are townhomes. So that's just a fix for clarity. Section 6 is a recent text amendment. This is, in essence, to support pedestrian-oriented businesses along the street frontage, along certain Main Street zoning districts. Specifically, that is the Main Street Subdistrict A, B, and C, as well as the mixed-use downtown. So, for example, this is only the street frontage, not the ground floor area, just the street frontage. In the diagram up at the top right, you'll see 50% of that street frontage shown in yellow or green, vice versa. And so in this example, 50% of the ground floor street frontage would need to be some sort of pedestrian-oriented business as defined in the ordinance.
How do we define that?
So it's actually 4 specific uses that are within the principal use table. So that is offices, recreational rooms, or common areas. And so other items can be used. And that would be the amenity space. Also, institutional or commercial use types would be permitted within that pedestrian-oriented business type. That's Section 6. Running through to Section 7, the last of the 7 sections. The Planning and Zoning Commission did not include Section 7 within its recommendation to City Council. Section 7 proposes a change to utility standards for residential accessory structures to allow lots that are 2 acres or more to have direct utility services. This could include water, sewer, natural gas, and electric. This text amendment does address all residential accessory structures. The text amendment does not address what we call for ADUs, or accessory dwelling units, and that was a key distinction. There was some concern at P&Z about that. The ADUs do have separate standards, I will point out. The Planning and Development Department, the reason that we are holding off on this now and we're recommending to hold off until we get some further clarification is that there are several bills within the legislature that address accessory dwelling units. So we're waiting until everything shakes out so we can get a good draft to you and to P&Z, of course, and to the citizens for consideration. That was a pretty quick summary of the 7 proposed text amendments, or those 7 sections within the text amendment. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for staff? Thank you. Public hearing's open. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this item? Ms. Stoddard?
My name is Judy Stalder. I'm here representing Trebic at 115 Southwest Gate Drive in Greensboro. Trebic is a member association of over 80 companies plus associations, the Piedmont Triad Apartment Association, the Greensboro Builders Association, and as of last week, the Home Builders of Winston-Salem. So we continue to grow and expand our area. I'm just here to thank staff for working with the development community to look at some options, especially on Section 1, for the amount of time permitted for adding conditions and getting them into the agenda. We also heard in our discussions that that does not stop staff from working on conditions, even if they're submitted after that time limit. We'd also like to thank them and encourage them in their changes to the ADU ordinance. We think there are some big things on the horizon at the state level, and we look forward to making it a little easier for people to have accessory dwelling units on their properties.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff Jones, are you still here?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, Ms. Jones, I skipped over you. Come on. You deserve a medal. You're like the last.
That's actually in line with what's here.
How you doing, Council? My name is Jeff Jones. I live at 3915 Johnson Street, High Point. I'm here to speak in favor of the direct utility service for 2 acres or over. I've been here since 2018, and we purchased our house and totally renovated it. Got approved to build the garage out back. I'm actually fortunate I got right at 3 acres. My garage is 60 by 80, and I actually have an ADU within the metal garage. So it's a metal structure with a 24 by 40 is my ADU. And I kind of been going back and forth a couple of years with Sam and, the council trying to figure out this solution to my utility problems. As Sam noted many times, I spoke with him many times, everything had to come off my residence. So in short, last year I got an electrician come out, we put a panel on my house and started figuring the run, which is 550 feet out to where I need to be. And by the time I ran out from there, I think my my amps would be about 160. So with trying to power the ADU within and my garage, it's also my garage, it's not just an ADU, like I said, it's inside my garage. Small portion is that. And when I bought the property, it has 2 other existing buildings there that's been there since '56. So I'm choosing not to tear them down. I like to have power out there for that, to run utilities out there. So in short, I wouldn't have been able to build this 60 by 80 if it wasn't for the amendment they passed not too long ago with 200%, 2 acres or over. So I did that. So I think of November last year, I spoke with Chris Andrews, which is, I think is no longer with High Point, and he mentioned to me that this was coming up in front of the council. So I think I've been calling him every month. And then I spoke Friday, and I noticed he's gone, and I spoke with Sam, and here I am today to discuss this. So I guess in short, I guess if anything to say, I guess if we could align that, I'm understanding there's not a whole abundance of 3 acres out there that's asking for this, but if we could align the 200% along with the direct utilities, that way, I can have enough what I want to do out there. Right now, I do not. So that's why I've just been holding off, and just glad I got to speak in front of you. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you.
Please don't tear down the buildings from 1956. Yeah, I like them.
Anyone else who'd like to speak on this item? Okay, hearing none, I will close the public hearing, and I'll make a motion for approval of this text amendment. This requires a consistency statement, I never can remember. All right, and I will add and agree with the consistency statement as stated in the staff report. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously. That, I believe, is the end of the planning and development portion of the agenda. So we'll move on to our general business agenda, and the first item is a public hearing related to the budget. We've seen the budget presentation. I don't believe we need to do that again, and it looks like we've run everybody off. But the public hearing regarding the budget is open. Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding the proposed annual budget? Okay, seeing none, I will then close the public hearing on the budget. We have yes, we have another meeting regarding the budget on Wednesday.
Thursday.
Thursday?
Yeah, Thursday, 4th.
The 18th, that's right.
18th.
That's right. That would be Thursday, right, the 18th. So we'll see each other on Thursday, I suppose. Next, under general business, there are a couple of boards and commission appointments. The first one is Vicki McKeever to the Parks and Recreation Commission. Her term will be effective immediately and will expire July 1, 2025, and I move for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second for approval of Ms. McKeever. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously. There's also an appointment of Amoy Lindo Coleman to the CAC, effective immediately and expiring May 31, 2025, and I move for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. I also have I'd like to bring a motion to the council to suspend the rules to add one item regarding the employment of our city attorney.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules to add that item. Any discussion on the motion to suspend the rules? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Then that item is added. And I'm pleased and happy to report to the city council and to the public, for anyone who's listening, that we have reached an agreement to employ our next city attorney, who will be Megan McGuire, who we all know very well and who has been our interim city attorney. I'm very glad to have her, and the council has been supplied with a copy of the proposed employment agreement, and I would like to make a motion that we approve that employment agreement as stated. Is there a second? Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the agreement for our city attorney, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously.
I wanted to say congratulations, but I want to let them vote first.
Congratulations, and apologies that it took so long.
And we have some minutes to be approved. Is there a motion regarding the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion regarding the minutes? Okay, all those in favor of approval of the minutes, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Before we adjourn, I'd just like to remind everybody that the police memorial service is tomorrow night at Green Street Baptist Church. I believe it starts at
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, that's right. And I'll be there, and hope you can make it. Is there anything else anybody would like to speak on before we adjourn?
Yeah, Mayor, just want to say to all the mothers who we didn't get to say it yesterday, but a happy Mother's Day, and how much we appreciate you, and I'm grateful we have a global holiday for mothers. We should have 2 of them in the year. I guess that's what Father's Day should probably be. So.
But it's not.
Mother's Day Part 2.
Mother's Day Part 2.
It's not. We get our socks next month. That's about it.
Okay. Anyone else? Anything to announce?
Not my family.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn then.
So move.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, we are now adjourned.